Okay, today, example 3 on page 758 says the equation of a circle is x squared plus y squared minus 8x plus 2y equals negative 8. And you're asked to state the coordinates of the center and the measure of the radius, then graph the equation. So this is not in standard form of a circle, okay? So when you're given this equation that's not in standard form, you're going to have to manipulate and work with this equation a little bit to get it in standard form. So the first thing you do is you take your x squared and you partner it up with your negative 8x, and then you put a blank space on your paper. And then you take your positive y squared plus your 2y and you leave a blank space on your paper. And then you keep it equal to negative 8. So you just repaired things a little bit. You moved around terms so that you got your like terms close to each other. The second thing you do now is a technique called completing the square. And you did this in Algebra 1 when you worked with trinomials. When you complete the square, you take half of this middle term, this negative 8x. You take half of negative 8, which is negative 4, and you square it. And negative 4 squared is 16. And you add 16 to the left side and to the right side of this equation. And then with your y squared plus your 2y, you do the same thing. You take half of 2, which is 1, and you square it, which is positive 1. And when you add 1 to the left side, you have to add 1 to the right side. And now you've created two perfect square trinomials that you can factor. And when you factor them, it looks like this. You got a left parenthesis and an x. And whatever half of this middle term was is the factor for this trinomial. So it's x minus 4 squared plus. You do the same thing with the y. It's y and it's half of the middle term, which is positive 1. And it's squared. And you make it equal to your negative 8 plus 16 plus 1, which is 9. So you factored the x squared minus 8x plus 16 to x minus 4 squared. You factored the y squared plus 2y plus 1 to the y plus 1 squared. And it's equal to 9 because you simplified the right side. So now, the center of this circle is going to be located at positive 4 and negative 1. And the radius of this circle is equal to the square root of 9, which is 3. And then you're going to graph the circle. So you've got a center at 4, negative 1. So you can go 4, negative 1, and there's your center. And then just go 3 units up, and 3 units down, and 3 units to the right, and 3 units to the left. And if you've got graph paper, it'll make your graph a lot nicer looking. And then play connect the dot here with. You can put 4 little arcs in there. 4 quarter arcs. Alright, so here's the center of your circle. Here's the radius of your circle. There's the graph of the circle. Got it? See it? Questions? Let's do another one. Now the equation is x squared plus y squared minus 4 is equal to 0. Now you had problems that looked like this yesterday. And you've got an x squared, but you have nothing with an x next to it. You've got a y squared and nothing with a y next to it. So when you have that, in this case, you can add 4 to each side. And you've got x squared plus y squared equals 4. And what would the center of this circle be? 0, 0, the origin. You did that yesterday. 0, 0. And what would the radius be equal to? The square root of 4, which is 2. So then you could plot it. Your center is on the origin, and you can go up to 2, put a point, down 2, put a point, go to the right 2, put a point, and left 2, put a point. And then you can sketch in some arcs. And there's your center, there's your radius, there's the graph of the circle. Any questions so far?
Yeah. How do you know what to take half of, like in the first problem?
Let's do another one then.
No,
You take half of the middle term.
okay. So that's on here.
You take half of the middle term when you're completing the square. So let's do x squared plus y squared plus 8x minus 14y plus 40 equals 0. What you're doing is you're forming a perfect square trinomial. A perfect square trinomial is something like x squared plus 10x plus 25. Alright? Because if you take half of the middle term and you square it, you get the third term. Half of 10 is 5, and 5 squared is 25. This would factor to x plus 5 squared. If you had x squared plus 8x plus 16, that is a perfect square. Because half of 8 is 4, 4 squared is 16. This would factor to x plus 4 squared.
I remember.
Okay? So what you're trying to do is form a perfect square so that when you factor it, you get something that looks like what goes in the circle formula. So you got this x squared and you got an 8x. So you got x squared plus 8x. And this 40 isn't half of 8 squared, is it? Okay. So leave a blank. You got positive y squared minus 14y. And half of 14 is 7. 7 squared is 49. So this 40 needs to move to the other side, doesn't it? It needs to get out of the way. So leave a blank space here and make it equal to negative 40. Because if you subtract 40 from each side, it would get the 40 off that side. You don't need it on there. So half of your 8's 4, and 4 squared is positive 16. So add 16 to both sides. And then half negative 14 is negative 7, squared is positive 49. So add 49 to both sides. So what's this first trinomial going to factor to? X plus 4 squared. And what's the second trinomial going to factor to? Y minus 7 squared. And it's all going to be equal to, who's that, 25? 25. So the center of this circle is at -4 and +7. The radius of this circle is 5.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Okay. So you can plot it and graph it. Anybody have any questions? Your assignment for today is right there. Page 760, 7 and 8. On the next page, 23 through 26. And then more of those standardized test practice problems. 51 through 54.